Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Cuyahoga County Health and Human Services and Aging Committee Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, to order. It is currently 1:05. Can we have a roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll for Ms. Conwell.
Present.
Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Ms. Stevens. Ms. Stevens is absent at the moment. Ms. Turner.
Present.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
You have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Anyone signed in for public comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one person signed in for public comment. Lou?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm here first to show my support to today's resolutions to help our unhoused population through shelter systems. But the shelter system itself has lots of flaws accumulated for decades. That's because one reason, not really an excuse, the funding has never been adequate. But why the funding has never been adequate? There are lots of reasons behind it. However, I can definitely present as a fact that the results for our service to be delivered has been compromised, also for a long time. For example, you guys have known that I have been sleeping on 3 chairs in the hallway since October 30th, 2022. This is a workforce issue. I will give you a good example. The people right now we have working in the shelter systems. Martin Sweeney,
Yes.
why aren't you eating the food? Now, Martin Sweeney probably will say, I'm allergic to this. I cannot eat it. Do you have alternatives?
I wasn't offered the food.
I know, you're not. Denying food is still a popular thing at the hell, at least. Just like a county jail, people can still get a bad food. In the past, I have only presented the facts that right now we can recognize the food better. But that doesn't mean overcooking, undercooking, all those things don't happen. People have dietary needs because nowadays the unhoused populations all come into our shelter system with, well, you want to say pre-existing condition, fine, with lots of health issues, especially even physical health issues. But is our shelter system equipped to accommodate people's health so they can actually work on their housing and job and family issues? No, not really. Can service provider really do whatever they want to do? No, because there are limits. So, continue to my example here. Now I will turn around to report to the boss. Ms. Conwell, Martin Sweeney refused to eat the food. And he even threw it to the garbage can. But I'm not reporting that my attitude towards Martin Sweeney was not friendly, was not considerate, not trauma-informed at all. My words probably triggered his frustration even more. At this moment, probably he's even more depressed if he already got the depression, or it would trigger his anxiety disorder, so now he will have a panic attack. So eventually we have to call 911. Or another way, his behavior will be simulated because of his being hungry and hangry. All these things are little things. Funding can actually help a lot. We can have a proper workforce in our homeless service system. We need that help desperately for a long time. Wish you can help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Liu. Approval of the minutes from the January 18th and the February 1st meeting. Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Turner, seconded by Miller. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Majority rules. Matters referred to the committee, I believe we do have 3 today. Madam Clerk, if you could read the first item into the record.
Resolution 2023-0038, making an award on requisition 10456 to Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry in the amount not to exceed $2,231,638 for operations and case management services for a 400-bed men's emergency shelter located at 2100 Lakeside Avenue, Cleveland, and for the facilitation and coordination of overflow shelter services for single adults and families at various locations for the period January 1st, 2023 through August 19th, 2023.
Good afternoon, Council. Melissa Surak, Director of the Office of Homeless Services, requesting this contract with Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry. LMM operates the emergency shelter for single adult men, which accommodates 400 men a night, located at 2100 Lakeside Avenue. Meals, access to laundry, and services to link men with employment and housing are provided 365 days a year. LMM also facilitates the provision of overflow shelter services for single men and families in partnership with community providers. The primary goals of the project are to operate an emergency shelter for single adult men, provide shelter, meals, access to laundry, and link with services for employment and housing, and facilitate the provision of overflow. This contract is late. You may recall over the last year, OHS worked diligently to update and create a master RFP process that was then rewritten and also addressed and adding a racial equity component. That was completed in May, and there was a delay on its release. It's also important to note that this is an 8-month contract. As the homeless continuum emerges from the pandemic, we are left with many challenges to overcome. These challenges remain consistent across our continuum as a whole and include changes in workforce, the struggle to hire and retain staff, and the increase in overall costs to operate when resources remain relatively stagnant. With me today, I have OHS staff Aaron Reardon, Maria Fosho, CEO of LMM, and Michael Searing to answer any additional questions.
All right. Director, has there been any changes in this contract whatsoever?
Not in the scope of services, no.
Any changes? So not in the scope. Right?
Changes in regards to financial request and the amount needed in order to operate shelter at a quality level. And Mr. Searing could speak more directly to that if you'd like him to.
Yes.
Hello, Michael Searing, Vice President of Housing and Shelter for Lutheran Metro Ministry. Thanks to Council for consideration of this contract and working with Melissa and Office of Homeless Services. As Melissa mentioned, this contract is a little over 8 months, and that is the dollar amount from the initial award letter, and it's not the full dollar amount we need to make it through the whole year. So we're going to be working with Office of Homeless Services on that balance.
Okay, so 2.2, a little over 2.2 is just for this 8-month period.
Correct.
Okay, and there were no rate increases or anything like that in terms of staff at your facility?
We did do a base wage increase. We are now at $16 an hour. We had been at 14 and had extremely high turnover and difficulty filling positions. So those increases, along with inflation, in particular food costs have skyrocketed, are the reasons why we'll need additional funding.
Okay, and Director, do you remember what the dollar amount, or Mike, if you remember what the dollar
It's
amount
approximately $2 million.
from last time?
Yes,
Okay.
additional.
So this increase is probably roughly around 231. So I'm trying to get what we had last time we passed this, and what exactly is the increase?
My apologies. The contract amount noted here today, the $2.231 million, is what they typically are awarded per year. The additional amount identified in conversations with myself and HHS Director David Merriman was an additional $2 million.
Addition on top of that. And that additional $2 million will just carry from what, 4 months? It'll be for 4-month period? Have some conversation about that. I'll open it up to my colleagues if they have any questions. Councilman Miller?
Madam Chair, to the Director. How many overflow spots do we have available?
For, I'm sorry, Councilman, seasonal or for overflow for the families? There are in the family overflow, there are 40 individuals that can stay there for overflow shelter.
And as of last night, were the 400 spaces filled, and how many of the overflow were filled, if any?
Yes, so at 2100, we were at about 320 people. Our legal occupancy is 365, and after that is when we use the overflow. Thankfully, we haven't been at our max in a little while. Director Sirak mentioned the seasonal shelter, which is the additional shelter capacity just during the winter season. There are 4 partners in that with 105 bed capacity, and we're currently running at about 70 of the 105.
And till how long does the seasonal program extend?
That goes till April 15th. And I'm pleased to say that Office Homeless Services is leading not only the regular strategic plan, but an additional breakout focusing on unsheltered and seasonal.
And how many do we believe are out there currently that are unsheltered?
So the unsheltered count is, I'll just have to say thanks to the county and the city, is a very low number, like compared to nationally, where you see, you know, Skid Row and the unsheltered count nationally is actually higher than the sheltered count. In this community, our partners, NEOC, probably have the best handle on it. I would say it might be 100 people. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. No,
Yes.
it's okay. That is accurate, Councilman. On any given night, especially at our point-in-time count that just passed, on average, consistently, we're around 100 individuals. However, I will say NEOC and the outreach team assist at various levels of assistance, probably about 250 individuals a year. Those could be individuals that do have stints staying in shelter and residing in shelter for some bit. That also includes humanitarian aid. But for those truly unsheltered, at our point-in-time count, it's roughly 100.
And how much was the actual expenditure for this program for calendar year 2022?
The unsheltered part is approximately close to $1 million, and that was funded out of City CARES Act dollars that carries us through April.
And actually, I was talking about the sheltered program that's analogous to this contract. How much was spent on those services in calendar year 2022?
It would be, I would say, approximately $3.5 million, and for 2100, and probably $800,000 for the Haven Family Shelter. The numbers were partially paid by COVID, separately funded COVID dollars. So I'm sorry that I don't have the exact number, but the combined funding sources are what funded both last year.
And are any of those COVID dollars still available, or has that been exhausted?
The only COVID dollars still available are City CARES Act 3, which end April 15th or April 30th.
So we're going to have to fill a pretty large gap that had previously been partially covered by COVID dollars. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I do. Through the
Councilwoman?
chair, if I may, Director, I was curious about how the 2100 expansion project is going and if that may affect this contract in the future.
Councilwoman, that's a very good question. We've been meeting regularly, weekly, with Public Works, LMM team, and our office as well. They've made it through the environmental reviews. They've actually broke some ground I believe, and I apologize, I'm not Public Works, but they've made some headway and actually started working on the building. They estimate it'll take us 6 month for completion of the 2020 project. And then in conjunction with that, we also do have an award that was received by LMM to update the VA wing, the Veterans Wing GPD beds, which is extremely exciting. Those will be congregate setting. And then we also, which will be before you hopefully soon, in ARPA, have recommended awarding $4.5 million for the actual 2100 updates themselves. So Public Works is moving along in the process. We're looking at a 6-month timeline. And then in addition to operations, I think it's early to tell what that will look like to have those additional operations, but I want to be clear, we're not adding additional shelter beds. That should require some additional operational components. We're creating the space so that people can safely live together and reside in the shelter. And if there's anything you would add. Okay.
That's great information, and it's good news, too. Thank you.
Extremely exciting, yeah. And it's one of the pillars of our strategic plan as a whole to create a safe, dignifying space. So I'm excited.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, seeing none. I'll make a motion to move R2023-0038 to the full council under second reading suspension. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Conwell, seconded by Sweeney. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. You're welcome. Madam Clerk, if you could please read the next item into the record.
Resolution 2023-0039, making an award on requisition 10456 to Young Women's Christian Association of Greater Cleveland, Ohio, in the amount not to exceed $2,536,793 for operation and case management services at the Norma Herr Women's Shelter, located at 2227 Payne Avenue, Cleveland, for the period January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Melissa Surak, Office of Homeless Services, requesting approval of this contract with Young Women's Christian Association, doing business as the YWCA Greater Cleveland. The YWCA serves homeless women ages 18 and above by providing immediate, low-barrier access to a safe and decent shelter in accordance with the Office of Homeless Services Advisory Board's adopted shelter standards. The YWCA assists these women's efforts to return to stable housing as quickly as possible and connects them with services necessary to ensure long-term stable housing and self-sufficiency. Services and programming support identified subpopulations included but not limited to individuals over 55, youth, individuals who self-identify as LGBTQ, pregnant guests, and those affected by trauma or other concerns, and veterans. The primary goals of the YWCA Emergency Shelter Program are to provide safe, trauma-informed, low-barrier shelter, develop and implement a permanent housing plan with each person, and link clients with community services to secure sustainable income and physical and behavioral health services. Not unique to our continuum, as I mentioned in the previous item, the YWCA shares in similar struggles in regards to staffing and increased cost in operations and fairly stagnant funding. We have had conversations with them as well as with HHS Director David Merriman regarding additional requests for this contract period. This contract is a full year, though you will notice, but there are additional needs. And then lastly, this contract is late as well as it served as part of the master contract. With me today, I have Executive Director Helen Forbes Fields, as well as Cynthia Daly and Aaron Reardon from OHS staff.
So I just wanted to ask a question for President of Forbes Fields. Should we say Forbes Fields, the full name? All right. In regards to processes and of payments, so have you noticed that there were any payment gaps or anything like that in terms of getting your payments?
Well, I would say that probably is one of our number one issues, and not to the blame of, certainly not the director, but we're a small nonprofit, $12 million budget, and we operate the shelter often on our own dime while we're waiting for reimbursements, which is very difficult for us to do. So that probably is one of my chief concerns and complaints, that we can get our payments in a very timely way.
Just had a meeting this morning upstairs in regards to that and learning the process and procedures that it goes through, the payment. So very enlightening, very lengthy process. And then I was told that the beginning of the contracts as well as the end of the year kind of produce other challenges in terms of payment. So
And we've been in conversation with Director Sarak about a different mode. I know you've talked about it in terms of payment and getting payment in a quicker fashion. So for instance, we've received payment until December, but now we're using our own funds for the operation of the shelter for January and February.
okay. So maybe we can have a side
Our
conversation.
funds are limited.
Director.
If I may add, Helen is mentioning that when this contract was originally established in 2017, when the YWCA started to operate the shelter, it was established that sat with DCAP and our contracts department. I'm not sure the history, I wasn't here. So in our conversations, I'm working to switch that appropriately within our department so that we would be handling the invoices to expedite the best we can, at least within our channel of that process you learned.
Okay, very good, very good. So I'll open it up to my colleagues. Okay, Councilman Miller.
So, what is the capacity of the women's shelter, and is there overflow?
So we have a total of, I wanted to make sure I had the right numbers. We have 177 beds, 30 to 35 mats. When we get over that, our average is about 200 a night. We don't turn women away. We offer other shelter if they choose to, but if they don't feel safe going out that evening, we may offer a chair for the night just so that they don't have to be out on the streets. But it's 177 plus 30 to 35 mats.
Excuse me, can you just state your name for the record,
I
please?
apologize.
Thank you.
Cynthia Daly from the YWCA.
Thank you.
So, I'd like to ask a question for both the women's shelter and the men's shelter. And the question is, how many people are in each of the shelter facilities that have been present continuously for 1 year or longer?
I can tell you that our average stay is between 30 to 90 days, but we do have several women who have been with us much longer, some as long as 15 years or more.
Hello, Michael Searing again. Our average stay last year was 37 days, and I would say we probably have about 20 people that have been a year or longer.
Thank you.
That completes your questions, Councilman Miller?
It does for now. Thank you.
Councilman Sweeney?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Rather dynamic team at the podium right now, and welcome, Madam President, CEO. And I had the privilege of touring the facility. And the one thing I want to make sure is that the great name of the YWCA stays the great name and doesn't get drawn into some of the complications with that site. And to say I was overwhelmed and physically moved when I walked into the facility, and it kept getting through the chair more emotional for me as I saw the one room on the first floor with all the beds with the folks that have a little bit more need. And then you go to the community room and then you see the mats stacked up. And then you talk to the wonderful gentleman that I talked to that's given his whole life to making sure this thing works. So my question, it's more of a story right there, but the question is, with the leadership of the YMCA operating it, with the entity that owns it, and the vision and plans on what it can be, I think we need to have a very, very focused emergency thought process on how we're going to deal with this. It is almost, you're dealing with a crisis and you came in, But the last thing I want is have the YWCA saying it's their fault. You're the champions that are coming in trying to manage a ship that is overwhelmingly, I don't want to put a really negative word, but it's emotionally when you walk in there, and the folks that need it's too small and it's not prepared to be able to handle the mission that you accepted. So these dollars keeps managing what we have. What would the long-term plan, if there is any, and if it's not, I think there is one, let's get kick-started more, and how can I help or we help is my question. And thank you, though, for stepping up and taking this job, man. We'd worked other places, but having you come here, it's a mission for you.
And we began operation of the Norma Herr Women's Center in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, we operate the facility or the program. Eden owns the building. I came on at the YWCA of July of 2022, and I would say Melissa's been very patient with me because I agree with you. It took me several days to process what I had seen at the shelter. And we are certainly committed to providing dignified care. And some days I question whether we can do that in the state of the facility as it is now. But I can tell you we've been in constant communication with Melissa when Dave Merriman was here about a new facility. Melissa can give you an update in terms of that. But Eden has just communicated that they're obtaining the necessary financing. And I could say in the last few weeks, I've been more encouraged than I have ever been since I've been here in terms of obtaining the necessary financing to begin new construction on the site. But I'll let Melissa give you more details.
Thank you, Madam President, or CEO.
Councilman, we do have a collective vision, which is a wonderful thing, and we do need your support. The work is hard. I don't think any of us can deny the level of struggle that's attached to the work that we do and that we all view as a vocation. And in such, the YWCA does a great job, and Eden is also a great partner. They have worked rigorously over the last year to devise plans working alongside our office as well as the YWCA through the acquisition of additional building, obtaining funding resources that are necessary in order to make this about $20 million project and transformation of our system and our approach to dignifying and shelter for anyone that needs it. They've turned over every stone to look for resources. Most of that money has been obtained. Where I need the support is within our internal process because we are committed. The county's proven its commitment is in the processing of those resources and those contracts. We are at a current state where Eden is contemplating what the next step is because when you're planning a project, things change, resources change, and your timeline changes, but they're in need of the necessary resources to move forward with this project. But we have a collective vision, and I think we can all see it at the end of the day that it's humane and it's dignified for every woman in the community.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, may I just?
Yes.
Does it have to be a privately owned building? Can the county own a building and then we could have the homeless shelter? It's just more of a thought than anything other than that.
I'm not sure at that point if the county would have entertained it. We did purchase 2020 Lakeside on behalf of 2100 around the same time.
Yeah, but that was for the men's shelter.
Correct.
So I'm just trying to, I am not at the table just yet
Right.
in regards to the solution here. I had the information when I took had the opportunity to visit, and there is a plan, and you're saying it's getting closer, which is good. I'm not here to upset the apple cart and say, let's start from ground zero. It was just a thought that I had.
Yeah.
So right now, and that came from us purchasing next to 2100. So that's not the course we're taking now, but that's not out of the question.
At this point, it is. Eden has demonstrated its commitment to this shelter by retaining the current building that they're in for Norma Herr, which they have to even from a financial standpoint, and with the acquisition of the additional building that's adjacent to it. So they're committed. We have the timeline. We need the resources to continue flowing through our pipeline.
And through the chair with the Eden, do they have our long-term, what's their contract duration for them to have us housed there in their facility? Because if we pay them rent, they own the building, and if they buy another building.
Correct.
just
We're
the
hoping they'd
tenant.
be able to reallocate those resources in the meantime. Our current plan does require that we would need, for lack of a better word, swing site. We would need an alternative location for the ladies based on all the parameters that keep changing.
And with Eden investing in a facility, another building that they'll own, what is our commitment to them to give them the comfort level that they're going to have their building filled with this particular county program, the homeless shelter?
Build in regards to enough ladies to reside within the space.
No, we could leave, can we leave the center right now?
We need both buildings in order to operate and provide non-congregate space for up to 200 women.
Are we giving them guaranteed that we're going to be there? And
That we have funding commitments, yes. Some have to be before you, but yes. We've partnered internally as well.
I'm just trying to, is there a long-term commitment for Norma Hurd Center to partner with Eden for 10 years, 20 years?
David Merriman, Department of Health and Human Services. I just want to correct one question that was asked. I don't know if it was answered or not. We don't pay rent to Eden for that space. Eden owns and operates that building. We have provided them support in the past for that operation, but to my knowledge, we are not paying Eden rent to operate the building.
Okay, thank you.
Correction, my apologies. We do provide funding for the maintenance of the building and the facility operations, but we do not pay rent.
Okay, I'm not prepared to go as deep as I want, but I got the overall gist of the game plan I heard. It's getting closer to becoming a reality.
And we'd be more than happy to sit down with you as well. Eden could show you the timeline and the plans if you'd like to see them in detail.
And my whole thing is the partnership between Eden, the YMCA, the YWCA, my bad, and then the Cuyahoga County, and what role each and every one of us play. I'm going to get more deep into that, and I apologize for not being as prepared to engage right now, but I'll look forward to it in the near
We
future.
welcome a discussion with council members about the facility and the plan and how quickly we can move our guests into a temporary space while the construction begins, whatever that actual plan is. I think to have you at the table would make a huge difference, and then we can really create a huge strategy, a big strategy, in terms of how the rest of the financing is obtained and what the timeline really should be.
And I'll take the direction from my chairwoman or my president, but I will be more than happy to try to work with whatever way we can with the three partners that are at the table, the county, the YWCA, and Eden. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
You're welcome. I know, Melissa, if you could state a little bit, Director, about the strategic plan that you're working on for the whole continuum, and then she's presented it to me, she's presented it to the OHS board, and I think she has a public that she's going to present, and then I was going to have her come here.
That's fine.
So no, but it speaks to, a global effect, because there's a lot of things that she's juggling, not just the women's shelter, which I'm, passionate just as you are, but a whole continuum. So can you just speak to the strategic plan a little bit in terms of where you're going to roll it out next, so to invite the council members to come?
I thought you were going to leave it as a cliffhanger, Councilwoman.
But they can come, but if they don't come,
March
we'll still
15th, Councilman, from 9 to 11 at the City Club of Cleveland. Just a shameless plug. We worked over the last year with Housing Innovations consultants that have been involved in our continuum for well over the last 10 years. They took the year to facilitate that strategic planning process. It first started with conducting 14 stakeholder interviews, internal and external, focusing on the needs of our continuum, as well as our office serving as the lead agency, not necessarily a county entity. They then followed that with conducting surveys with persons with lived experience, as well as attending several homeless Congress meetings. And then they also, lastly, held 3 community workshops to then notify everyone of what those results are. What are we seeing? Do we have the right pulse on this? Would you agree with all of this? All that to say, there are 5 pillars of that plan that will be unveiled next month. specifically related to these contracts before you today is the fact that it is our goal to transform the shelter to provide safe, dignified space and trauma-informed, and that is the pillar in which these contracts fall.
Doing my job. So that's one of my things, and Director Sirek has been an advocate of stepping up as a director. I charged all the directors under HHS to come up with a global picture of what they're working on, whether it was seniors, homeless, or whatever, so we could start and see as a council, as we work on our budgets, where we can start implementing money as we move forward with some of those outcomes. So.
Intense meeting this morning, I saw.
Oh, intense, always intense. It wasn't intense, was it, David? It was relaxed.
Intense, it was,
But,
was a
but,
powerful room.
but anyway, so we open that up. If not, if you can't make that day at the City Club, we will have her present that meeting there. I think you'll like it. If we invest, and with the finance chair, Miller, on this committee, if we invest over a number of years, we can see some savings. And we can actually move individuals out to their own homes. So that's the ultimate goal that we all want to do. Any other questions or comments in regards to this contract? Hearing none, seeing none, I will make a motion to move R2023-0039 to the full council under second reading suspension. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Conwell, seconded by Turner. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, ladies. Madam Clerk, if you could read that last item into the record.
Resolution 2023-0040, making an award on requisition 10456 to Mental Health Services for Homeless Persons Incorporated, doing business as Frontline Service, in the amount not to exceed $1,422,933 for temporary housing for single adults and youth at North Point Transitional Housing, located at 1550 Superior Avenue, Cleveland, for the period January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Melissa Surak, Office of Homeless Services, requesting a contract with Mental Health Services for Homeless Persons, DBA Frontline Service. Frontline Service operates North Point, which serves single adults and youth age 18 to 24. Residential services are provided 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The program provides for basic needs such as hygiene products, clothing, laundry services, and 3 meals a day. Services focus on individuals with high barriers for housing stability and provide wraparound support. North Point case managers provide linkage to services that will assist clients to secure permanent housing and achieve self-sufficiency through a housing-first model. The primary goals of the emergency shelter program are to provide safe, trauma-informed, low-barrier shelter, develop and implement a permanent housing plan with each person, and link clients with community services to secure sustainable income and physical and behavioral health services. With me today, I have Erin Reardon, OHS staff, and LaTanya Murray from Frontline Service.
Just, Director, ask a question. If out of the 1.4, that's, I guess, the contract that we're putting in levy dollars. Those are levy dollars, right?
Correct.
Okay. Are any of the residents living there giving any stipend or anything back for it? I don't think I've ever asked this question.
They are not.
Okay, so it's totally.
I'm just confirming. They are not.
Yeah, I didn't know. And in the strategic plan that we're not revealing now, this is part of the incorporated, this housing?
Yes,
Okay.
this rehab is definitely a part of that, as well as the customized services to young adults will also be reinvented through this space.
Open it up to my colleagues. I don't care about the temporary house.
We love it. Keep up the good work.
We want a house, Councilman, we want a house.
Hey, hey.
Wait a second. Can I?
Yes.
Thank you. Can you come up and tell me how wonderful your program is? And introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you. I'm LaTanya Murray from
Hi, LaTanya.
Frontline. Hi. Yeah, it's a unique program. We really do operate similar to an emergency shelter, but we actually, it's not congregate living. They are actually individual rooms. This was once a small hotel. And so people have a roommate. So it is a different kind of situation. There's more privacy, it's more dignified. Our population is smaller, but we are working closely with others in the community to provide dedicated services to young adults so we can ensure that we're ending that cycle of homelessness for those who come into our system who are young. So we're trying to provide a lot of wraparound services to them, linking them with individual services as well as employment. So our whole focus really is supporting our residents with moving to permanent housing via employment if possible.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Keep up the good work, and thank you for sharing that with me.
If I may also just add, I wanted to mention that this building needs a little love, and it is owned by the city of Cleveland. And just to demonstrate our partnership and working with community development at the city, they are investing in the rehab of that building. So that's extremely exciting as temporary housing, and the shelters are renovated as well.
When the renovations start, Director, will this, where would the temporary housing be? Or is it going to be drawn out, try to do a few rooms?
Last I knew, they were going to be working with the individuals currently residing in the space.
That take a while? Is that a
Exactly.
long
Yes.
process?
So we are working closely with the city in their URA compliance, Unified Relocation Act compliance department to make sure as we have to move people out of certain rooms, we're rehabbing they completely did a new boiler system a couple years ago and now are rehabbing all the heating units and plumbing throughout the building. So we're not at full capacity in terms of our census because of that, and we're moving, and we have dedicated rooms to move people around to.
So we're not at full capacity yet?
Right, we're not at full capacity because of the work that needs to be done.
So what would be, Ms. Murray, what would be good to see you again,
Hey,
Happy
good
New
to
Year and all that catch up?
Good to see you as well.
What is the timeline for the renovations if we had cleaned everyone, moved everyone somewhere else? And what would that timeline be as we're going to try to do it as it is?
We probably could have done it quicker, but it probably will take at least a good year because we hope to be starting sooner within the next couple months with the heating units. It's been a 5-month plan just to get to where we are now. With most things that happen through COVID, there's delays in materials and other things. And so I had thought things would be working by the end of December, and then I just heard that the parts just shipped February 10th. So, yeah. So it's been a slower process, and it really has nothing to do with the residents as much as whatever the procurement process and all of that has been.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for, and you wanted an update? It kind of speaks to the youth, since we're talking about youth housing. You can bring it up now.
Yes, they were before the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they were granted the variance based on providing a safety plan, as well as ensuring that they're only operating within the required hours that they identified, which I believe was 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., but don't mark my...
That was one of the questions I had when it was brought to my attention, but it's in my colleague's district. And the one was the funding, when the award for the operation before the zoning got approved, but that's mute now because it's going to be approved. And then the highest and best use of a drop-off center, I thought was 24 hours, but it's the best we can do with the location that we have to have the restricted hours.
Not every drop-in center nationwide is 24 hours. Some suggested as best practice, but we have a pretty secure safety net such as North Point that those off-hour accommodations could be made for any young adult that comes into the drop-in center and does not have a space to reside in for that evening.
Oh, perfect, yeah. I'm
yes.
just going with best practice. In your professional opinion, because you are our lead on this is a place where the hours of operations work well for us.
Yes.
It's a lot better than we have now because we don't have.
We have no space that is uniquely creative for a young adult environment to be served in.
One of the many things that you have to juggle that our chairwoman has highlighted, so keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Any other questions in regards to this contract? All right, hearing none, seeing none. R2023-0040, I move Make a motion to move to the full council under second reading suspension. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Conwell, seconded by Turner. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right. Director, we're going to keep you up there for the miscellaneous business. I just had a question going back to, I guess, the previous contract. Was I aware of, am I having a kind of a lapse in memory that there was a discussion about a new building? And I guess we were talking about the women's shelter. I know we were doing some kind of add-on or something like that. Is that what we're
For
referring
Norma
to
Hare,
as?
for Norma Hare, yes. Eden purchased the adjacent building to it, and then they'll be connected.
It's all coming back to me.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else you'd like to share with us, Director?
Thank you.
All right.
I'll see you March 15th.
Meeting adjourned.